Welcome to the Game Disc Podcast, where every week we wrap up all the biggest gaming news from last week, tell you what to expect this week, and decide the top 100 games of all time. I'm your host, Simon St, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Noah St.
And today, we're reminded why Warner Bros. Discovery is the greatest corporation to ever exist. Then, on this very special Mario Days Eve, March Madness continues at the Game Disc when we honor the sacrifices Mario has made for all of us by deciding which Mario game is the best and going on our top 100 games of all time. We will get to all that, but first, Noah, how are you celebrating Mario Day tomorrow?
I am celebrating Mario Day by playing PlayStation a lot. But for real, the new PlayStation Plus games for March, one of them is Sifu. It's a game I've been interested in for a while, and the fact that now I can get it for free is something that I'm very excited about. And spoiler alert for the what have I been playing? I've been playing a good amount of Sifu. What about you, Simon? How are you doing?
Okay, you heathen, playing PlayStation on Mario Day?
If it makes you feel any better, what I'll do is I'll go on to Dreams and I'll play like some user-created Mario level. Will that help?
No, it's not the same.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, here's what I do. I'll write a letter to Nintendo thanking them for Mario. Is that better?
It's closer.
Okay, tell you what, here's what I'm gonna do. My girlfriend, she bought me some Mario souvenirs from when she went to Universal Studios. They're in a nice case. I put them in my apartment to decorate them. I'm gonna just stare at them all day. Will that help? I'm staring at them right now. Yeah, I'm staring at them right now. There's a
That's what you should be doing. Mario has done so much for us, and for you to not even acknowledge him, it's insulting.
Isn't it a reoccurring joke on this podcast that I hate Mario and Nintendo?
Yeah, but I thought that you'd at least be putting aside that for what is arguably the most important day of the year.
Yeah. Well, it's like a Satanist celebrating Christmas.
It's like, still do it.
It's like, I'm not going to, I don't like this, but I mean, it's Christmas. I gotta.
Yeah.
I guess that may... Alright, so I'm staring at my Mario shrine right now, if that makes you feel better.
That makes me feel a lot better, yeah.
Okay, cool. What about you? What are you going to be doing for Mario Day?
I'm going to be going to church with Chris Pratt, as Miyamoto intended.
Oh, I want to go to church with Chris Pratt.
I mean, you can. That's better than playing Sifu.
I mean, that's true, but is it better than staring at a Mario souvenirs all day?
I was going to say yeah, because that's probably more painful, but going to church with Chris Pratt might actually be more painful. And of course, the real spirit of Mario is doing something incredibly painful.
Yeah, I like how you're going to church with Chris Pratt. Not even like anything Mario related, like, I'm going to watch the Mario movie and feature live commentary with Chris Pratt, or like, I'm going to play Mario with Chris Pratt. It's literally, I'm going to go to church with Chris Pratt.
That's the true meaning of the holiday. I don't know what to tell you. But so again, Mario, thank you so much for everything you do for us every day, for giving us the strength to carry on when things just get hard. Speaking of things getting hard, Warner Bros. Discovery is in a hard place, and it is sad because...
Real quick, what was that transition that you made? Speaking of things getting hard.
I realized that after I said it.
Is that the transition you would like to go? Because it's like, speaking of things getting hard, did you know that Rooster Teeth originally meant cockbite? Wink, wink.
Oh, God. Okay.
But anyway, as you're saying,
I mean, at this point,
things are getting
too
erect.
far in. Yeah, I'm too deep. I can't pull out now. So the whole Warner Brothers Discovery gave us not one, not two, but three pieces of I would say arguably just as much fucked up news. And
Yeah, it's a real
it
gangbang of fucked up news.
yeah. And if it weren't for people losing their jobs, it would almost be funny. Like the sheer level of incompetence this corporation has. Like it is absolutely insane. So let's just kind of start off, which is, I think, kind of the big one, at least the one that you and I probably care about the most. Warner Brothers Discovery did announce that Rooster Teeth will be shut down. This was after the corporation had unsuccessfully tried to sell it off. It was announced by Rooster Teeth general manager Jordan Levin in an all-hands meeting on last Wednesday. They are still trying to, they being Warner Brothers Discovery, is still trying to sell the rights to some of the more popular Rooster Teeth properties like Ruby, Red vs. Blue, and Genlock, and the Roost Podcast Network. And in shutting it down, approximately 150 employees will be laid off. This is a huge shame. I'm not like a massive Rooster Teeth fan, but they were definitely formative for kind of, at least for us growing up when we did. Red versus Blue was huge. I actually still I bought Red versus Blue on DVD and Blu-ray, and it's a great show. I think about so many of those lines just like daily, like where the one that I always think about is whenever he's talking about his new diet. I don't remember which character it was, but he says
It was Griff.
Was it Griff? Because I couldn't remember
or
if
no,
Griff is the one that's...
it was Simmons had the new diet and Griff added on.
That's what, yeah, that's what I thought. And so Simmons is on his new diet, and he says like, I just eat it's you just eat things that start with vowels. So for breakfast I had eggs and Oreos, and for lunch I'm gonna have asparagus and Oreos. And Griff says, that's a diet? I didn't even know it was so healthy. I've been on that diet for years, and I even cut out the eggs, and I don't know what asparagus is. It's just, and things like team killing fucktard, and like, it's such...
And shut up and die, asshole.
Yeah, and like all of Caboose's lines, it's all just... That show is so good, and it there's a reason it was able to kind of build this empire. And then as you and I both got a little older, we started watching Funhouse 2, which we really enjoyed.
That's more inside gaming too. It was Funhouse.
Yeah. So this is just a huge shame, but again, not totally surprising given Warner Brothers Discovery's penchant for making bad decisions and destroying things people love.
Yeah, and this is the thing, though. I'm going to be 100% honest. This is an opinion that a lot of other people have, and this can be considered a hot take. It can also not. I don't think you can blame Warner Bros. Discovery entirely for this. Like, I spend a lot of time online, and two things I'm seeing is, oh, well, Rooster Teeth went woke, so they went broke. And the other thing is, this is all Warner Bros. Discovery's fault. And the truth of the matter is that Rooster Teeth themselves just were making a lot of bad decisions, unfortunately. Like, they were trying really hard to grow their platform, and they were kind of alienating the old audience as well. I remember like watching several videos where it was like, oh, they forgot to record them off. They forgot like to turn on their recording software. Oh, they forgot to turn off their mic. Technical issues like that. And when people brought them up, their response was, well, if you don't like it, just leave. So a lot of people left. And if you really do want to be a major big budget production company like Rooster Teeth seemed to have wanted to, you gotta nail the small scale stuff. And that's the thing, like, from what I've gathered, it seems like throughout its entire expenditure at Warner Bros., the only profitable division at Rooster Teeth was Funhouse. And it seemed like it was kind of like, instead of thinking, okay, why is Funhouse successful? How can we make the other divisions more like that? They instead were just kind of forced Funhouse to work more and harder to try to offset the financial costs. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but also just by all accounts, it seemed like Rooster Teeth had a very toxic work environment as well. Like, from how they treated animators to several mm, employees who quit telling their behind the scenes stories. Like, I don't you can't blame Warner Bros. Discovery entirely for this. Rooster Teeth had a lot of flaws, and there is something that is it is a sad story because so many people lost their jobs, but there is one hilarious part in this entire story, and that is on the Rooster Teeth subreddit. So, um, as you know, like pretty much anytime a big event like this happens on the subreddit, there's a post usually by a mod that's like kind of like, hey, just a heads up, like this is kind of what's going on and like state of the sub. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the subreddit was made a post detailing that, and it was just a pretty standard post. And then afterwards, the mod posted a comment that they pinned that said, Rule 6 is being suspended for the time being. However, I would ask that you please try to keep things civil. This is a very emotional time for all of us.
What was Rule 6?
Do not come here to complain about how Rooster Teeth is dead.
No, that's kind of funny.
And it's like, yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, it is easy to blame Warner Bros., especially because they have been making so many bad decisions, or just bad decisions lately. But the thing is, people saw the writing on the wall. I literally told my coworker this Monday, like, yeah, Rooster Teeth, it's not going to be here within 3 years. Of course, it happened much sooner, but yeah, and I think that is unfortunate.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think that Rooster Teeth had a lot of problems. I think, like you said, though, Warner Brothers does still, I think, share some of the blame. For on one hand, like you said, well, if Funhouse was working, why not put them in charge and have them turn it around? Why is your initial reaction to just cut? If you've got something profitable, why not figure out why that's working, or at least keep it around to keep it profitable? On top of that, I'm not going to say that Warner Brothers or that Rooster Teeth was perfect. I definitely don't think that's true. But at the same time, I think that the main branch of Rooster Teeth probably had a much closer control, or had a much I don't know what the kind of term is, but I think Warner Brothers was definitely kind of looking down on them more than other people. And that's probably why Funhouse was more successful, because they had a little bit more freedom that the main Rooster Teeth branch just didn't have. And you wonder how much of kind of those things that they did were pushed down by Warner Brothers. Again, I don't know. I think it's probably both parties at fault. But I like I said, I think both parties are at fault. I think Rooster Teeth probably could have done things better. But also, I feel like there was probably a lot of pressure put on them by Warner Brothers Discovery that maybe led to exacerbated an ongoing problem. Because there was no way that it was just in a vacuum.
No, and that's kind of what I'm saying is, like, I don't think Warner Bros. Made it easier, but I mean, you have to understand, Rooster Teeth started off as a couple guys making funny videos, and then it became like a 400 like a company that employed 400 people, and it's like, not everybody can go from making funny videos to now running a company. It's just, and unfortunately, It seemed like Rooster Teeth, they didn't quite know how to do it, and yeah, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah. Another branch of Warner Brothers Discovery that is going through some issues, and this one can be pretty much fully pinned on Warner Brothers Discovery, is that the Adult Swim game publishing label is going to have a lot of those games delisted. This came directly from the developers of these games, who basically sounded the alarm. They said, hey, these games are getting delisted. they are hoping they're able to republish these games since they still have all the files and things. But if it's republished, it's basically going to act as a new game. So all like the Steam badges and community stuff, I'm guessing mods included, would go away and have to be republished as well, which would be up to individuals, not the developers, since they don't, I don't think, have that control. Several of these developers have reached out to Warner Brothers Discovery in an attempt to transfer ownership to avoid having to republish the games, but they have not received a response. Yeah, I think this is just par for the course with Warner Brothers Discovery. They just don't really seem to have an idea of how anything works. They probably saw the numbers on a spreadsheet of how much the server costs or something that they were paying for these games cost. So they were like, well, let's just cut them all. And because I'm guessing a lot of that is a skeleton crew in their attempt to save money, there's just nobody to answer the developers' emails. I'm guessing, some of those people were probably already let go, and that is a department that just doesn't exist anymore. But that's just kind of my own guess, but...
I honestly don't know what the most recent releases for Adult Swim games were. I don't know what their most recent release was.
I think one of the big ones was like the Samurai Jack game from like a couple of years ago.
Oh, they made that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, what I was thinking, my view of Adult Swim games is they made a lot of like iOS app games, like from years ago when like the iPhone was first introduced. So I was thinking like, I wouldn't be surprised if they saw that that was what most of their games were, and that was before every app was a free app but heavily monetized, so they just weren't profitable anymore. And that could also be why they're just like, you know what, most of these aren't really profitable, let's just delist them, we're losing more money than we're making on them. But yeah, it is interesting though that going forward, again, they have
just transfer ownership. If you don't, if I don't know how Steam works. I can't imagine keeping games on Steam is that expensive. But if it is, then just transfer ownership.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm guessing the reason why they aren't doing that is because they're like, oh, well, if somebody ever wants to buy like the IP and such, we can. And which is nobody's gonna want to buy the IP outright, or maybe it's like, well, in case anybody ever wants to buy us, we can use it to overinflate our value, which is weird because they just merged with Discovery. But yeah, who knows? I'm not an expert in corporateology, so I definitely don't.
Yeah, I'm not either. But again, even if that is what they're doing, just trying to hold on to rights to maybe sell at a later time, in the meantime, they're taking away profits from smaller people who need that money. Because to Warner Brothers Discovery, maybe it's probably they're still making money, they're just not making as much for them to justify it. But for these publishers, they probably are. They clearly are, or else these publishers wouldn't have said anything. And finally, this is my favorite. This is, I think, my favorite thing any CEO has said ever, because it is so... It's like when you hear this statement, everything they're doing makes sense. So at the Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference, JB Parrott, who is the executive in charge of Warner Brothers Discovery's gaming division, said that they're going to focus on mobile and live service to avoid the volatility of the video game market. They want a consistent and better source of revenue. What the actual fuck?
It's even worse. In that, so in that same like topic, not the same sentence, but like that same kind of breath, they literally mentioned Hogwarts Legacy sold over like 100 million copies, and the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League underperformed, like didn't meet our expectations. So they literally acknowledged that the game that they put a lot of money in failed drastically, and the single player game did it super well, exceeded their expectations, and they're like, yeah, but we're gonna make more games like the one that failed.
It's like, yeah, it's like they see these executives are so fucking stupid. It's like they
Hmm.
see what other companies are doing. They see Fortnite, they see Genshin, and they're like, "Oh, well, we'll just do that because that's more money." And they don't realize, like, yeah, if every developer and publisher could have a Genshin or a Fortnite, they would. There's a reason that they don't. Like even Helldivers 2, which is like the biggest multiplayer game to release this year, the jury's still out on its staying power. In 2 months, nobody could be talking about it. I don't know if that's going to happen. I've heard the game's really good, but I also know that they just
Hmm.
updated it and people are mad, and that can sometimes kill a game. And that's kind of my point. Like, you made the best selling game last year. It beat out Call of Duty and FIFA. That doesn't happen. That only happens when Rockstar decides to make a new Grand Theft Auto. And you
Hmm.
did it. And instead of doubling down and saying, hey, maybe this is where our video game strategy lies, you turn to the thing that just failed, that everybody's been panning, and you say, but we're going to do that instead because maybe that will make money. And I think part of his comment was misconstrued. I think he less means games like Suicide Squad and more just means mobile games. But like, what what mobile game is can you make that is gonna make more money than Hogwarts Legacy? You made a Harry Potter game developed by the people who made Pokemon Go, and nobody cared. If that doesn't work, I don't see what I don't see you making a DC or Game of Thrones or Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings game that can do better than that. And then why are you even bothering? Because it's not going to make the money you want. And so instead, what
Hmm.
you're going to do is kind of like what we talked about last year. You're going to have your studios making these shitty mobile games and live service games that aren't going to meet expectations. So then in a couple of years, you're not going to have these big budget games. You're just going to have all these live service flops. And of course, you'll be fine, but you're going to lay off all the devs who you told to make these garbage games. And in the meantime, indie devs are going to be releasing games and making a lot of money. It's the same thing that we talked about with EA last week, where in a
Hmm.
couple of years, they're setting themselves up for failure. They're so concerned with next quarter.
Short-term profits.
They're not thinking about next year. And at this point, I don't care anymore. If I never play a triple A big budget game, I'll be bummed, but I know that indies are gonna fill in the gaps. And my personal hope is that we get like kind of smaller double A games that are maybe closer to the types of games we got during the 360 era that aren't super expensive to make and don't take 8 years to come out. And I'm fine with that. I am totally fine with that being my relationship with gaming. And
Yeah.
I'll and yeah, and it sucks because there's a lot of the developers are going to be the ones losing their jobs. If these corporations do have massive shakeups, it's going to be the executives who get their golden parachute. But I just really don't see a future where companies like EA and even Warner Brothers, I don't see them having those big games in 5 years.
Yeah, and even then, it's something like, now I did read a comment that's like, to play devil's advocate, it was like, this wasn't a statement made towards gamers, this was made towards shareholders, and shareholders like live service games because it's like, oh, you make a game once and then they get a lot of profit. And the thing is, though, they literally said, yeah, this game made so much money, but we're not going to make more stuff like it. And it's like,
Exactly. I
and
don't
that's the
think that's a
weird
good
thing. It's
argument.
you're literally, yeah, like you're literally telling shareholders like, yeah, this thing made so much money, but we're not going to make things like it anymore. It's just
Yeah,
so
that I feel like
bizarre.
that argument doesn't make sense because the shareholders are not experts in this field.
Mhm.
The executive is supposed to be. So what he should have said
Yeah.
is, we were going to make mobile and live service games, but due to the launch of Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, which did not meet expectations, and due to the overwhelming reception, financial and critical, that we received for Hogwarts Legacy, we will be making games like that. because that seems to be a more surefire path. And the
Mhm.
shareholders would see the money that Hogwarts Legacy made and the money that Suicide Squad made, and they would
Mhm.
say, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Instead, what they're telling their shareholders is, hey, the best-selling video game of last year wasn't good enough.
Mhm.
And why are you... If that's not good enough, nothing will be. Because the odds of you making a live service game that will make you more money than Hogwarts Legacy is slim to none. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Mhm.
You're
No.
not going to make the next Fortnite. You already killed Multiverses, which was somewhat promising. I don't think they'll have a game bigger than Multiverses.
Well, to be fair, Multiverses was weird. I don't know too much of what happened. I know it started off hot and then it just flopped.
Which is
I know
another
it started
risk you
off
run when you have a live service game.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason Multiverses flopped was I think like characters started coming out slower than they should, or the characters that got released people weren't that excited for.
Which is...
I still think
I want to mention
I
that
still
whenever you finish this thought, I want to add on to that.
yeah, I still think it was a couple years back. I was like, I am so excited for 10 years from now when we are like, hey, remember that time DC randomly put Black Adam in like everything? Because Black Adam is not relevant anymore. And even playing those games and seeing all that stuff, like he was in a Justice League team, he was teased at the end of Super Pets 2. Like, I was like, man, it's going to be really funny to look back on this and be like, man, remember when DC bet everything on Black Adam? Because I just
Yeah.
knew even back then
Yeah,
it wasn't going to meet their
going to have staying
expectations.
power. But
No.
my favorite thing about your last comment, and then we can move
Yeah.
on and talk about something other than Warner Brothers Discovery,
Yes.
was you said it. Characters started coming out too slow, and that's why interest dropped. That's the thing about live service games. It's not you make a game and then it's not a money printing machine. Fortnite, there's been reports about the developers at Epic like dying because they have to feed the Fortnite beast. It is not this free money where you make a game and the money just comes in every day. You need to dedicate. You can't do anything else. That's why Naughty Dog didn't make their Last of Us live service game, because they would have had to become a live service studio. And this idea that, well, if we just make a live service game, we'll just get all the money, it just shows a complete lack of understanding of the industry. And these are the guys who are in charge of it. It is so frustrating and mind-boggling, but... And again, like always, the developers are going to be the ones to pay. Just like Yuzu, who had to pay $2.4 million because they developed a Nintendo Switch emulator, and Nintendo filed a lawsuit against them. Developer Tropic Haze shut down all websites related to Yuzu, delete all data related to Yuzu, and had to hand over all yuzu.emu.org sites and all hardware related to Yuzu over to Nintendo. This happened so fast. I meant to talk about this last week and I forgot to add it to. Basically, Nintendo filed a lawsuit against Tropic Haze, who developed the Switch emulator Yuzu. This was mostly done in response because Tears of the Kingdom actually leaked early through Yuzu, so people who were using this emulator could play Tears of the Kingdom before people who were legally buying the game. And within like less than a week, the developer said, yep, we're basically agreeing to everything you want, which a lot of people assume is because Yuzu's lawyer said, yeah, you're fucked. Don't take this to court because it's only going to get worse. And on one hand, I get it. Nintendo is notoriously bad about preservation. And so the idea that it does set a scary precedent for emulators for things like the DS and the 3DS, which are now completely dead. And the only way to play those games is to buy potentially expensive cartridges. But at the same time, that doesn't apply to the Switch. Like, the Switch is fine. The Switch 2 is probably going to have backwards compatibility. It seems like Yuzu was just there to play Switch games at a higher resolution on more powerful hardware, which, I mean, okay, I guess, but most of the time, I doubt these people were buying if you're just gonna pirate Tears of the Kingdom anyway, you're not gonna buy it, and if you're not gonna pay $60 for it, like, don't play it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm just a
and
Nintendo fanboy, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's just a lame excuse. Like, the Nintendo hardware is cheap. It's like you can play Tears of the Kingdom for $360, even less if you went with a Switch Lite. Like, okay.
well, and I think that's the thing. It's like games cost money to make, and I'm just gonna be honest. This was stupid. It was a bad idea from the get go. In fact, part of me was like, why are we even talking about this? It's literally, yeah, somebody did something stupid. Somebody played stupid games, so they got a stupid prize. And it's like, I think there is an argument for online preservation. And like, we still don't have a GameCube. Like, we still don't really have any good GameCube. Like, Switch Online doesn't have GameCube games and such, and there is the argument where it's like Nintendo, there's no way to play this game that profits Nintendo anyway. Why shouldn't we do
Which is
it?
fair.
But it's the fucking Switch. You can literally walk to Walmart and buy these games. Like, no, I I really don't support piracy. I know that's an unpopular opinion in like the gaming. I don't really like it. But even if you're gonna pirate, don't do the thing that's currently out. Like, it's that, and it's just it's
Yeah, I'm kind
executives
of on
making
the
bad
yeah.
decisions.
Well, and to kind of further your point, it's one thing like Yuzu. From what I gathered, most people used Yuzu because they wanted to play Nintendo games on good hardware. They wanted it to run at like 4K, 60 FPS, whatever.
Mhm.
But even that, I feel like is kind of an excuse
Yeah.
to like, well, I would buy Nintendo if they release it on superior hardware, and it's like, I don't think you would. I think you're glad Nintendo makes garbage hardware because it gives you an excuse to pirate it. But even worse was the fact that these developers, the developers of Yuzu, had like a Patreon, and they posted guides on how to download this stuff, which I think is what really fucked them over. Like, I think if they just made a Switch emulator and then
Mhm.
let other people kind of talk about it, they'd be okay. But the fact that they were accepting money for making a legal, like a way to pirate Switch games, like, no
Yeah.
shit, you were gonna have Nintendo come after you. And like
Yeah.
you said, yeah, go ahead.
And I'm sure that there are people that were like, I want to play it on more superior hardware. So they bought the game. Like, they still bought it to support Nintendo and the creation of the game, but then they downloaded it just to play it.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure some
I
people
I can
did, but
guarantee that a majority of people who did it were like, yeah, I'll just download it and play it. And yeah, and if Yuzu, like you said, if Yuzu just made it and stopped, it would have still gotten shut down. It definitely would. Especially if Tears of the Kingdom was released early, definitely still would have gotten shut down. But the fact that they were trying to profit off of it was just such a bad idea. Like, I don't like that. The thing is, when somebody makes a Kickstarter for something, when somebody makes a fan game, they're expected to get kicked, yeah, expected to get shut down. Why? I can't wrap my head around it. Why I don't get why you would.
yeah,
It's
no,
such a dumb idea.
yeah, I agree, and so I feel bad for probably some guys who were. Well, actually, I don't know if I do because they were making like $40,000 a month or something. So, uh, I mean, there's a reason they have to pay that much. Don't
Yeah,
like.
it's
Sorry, if you want to play Nintendo, this is kind of something I've kind of been thinking about a lot with
yeah.
Xbox games coming to
Switch.
PlayStation and
Uh,
and Switch, and a lot of people being like, "This is so good. Exclusivity is bad for the industry," and it's like, you don't have the right to play every video game. Like,
mm-hmm.
no other. That would be like me signing up for Netflix so I could watch Disney shows. Like, it's
Well, no,
no
people complain about that.
Yeah, but again, and I get it, but it's like that's kind of the point. Like
Yeah.
I will say things have gone over like loaded like with all these different services and things.
Mhm.
But there's like we only got this far because the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1 had their own libraries. And
Mhm.
that's what sets it apart. If you can play both your games, if the two systems are identical, then one of them's going to go away. How do you even pick one? And
Mhm.
it's just so yeah, like sorry that you have to buy a Nintendo Switch to play Nintendo games. And I'm sorry that if the Switch, if you're like, nope, I will never play a game at that resolution, then don't play the game.
Then that's
Like
awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
you can
awesome, dude.
focus on playing Crisis 3 or whatever is the I don't know, biggest game right
Crisis
now.
3? Wait, hold on one second here. Crisis 3 is the biggest game right now.
Isn't it? I basically just like proved how old I was by saying Crisis is like the best
Simon,
looking game
Crisis
ever.
3 is over 10 years old.
If you want to play a lot of good looking games, I want to move on. I don't like where this is going.
No, you don't get to. Crisis 3. That's you could have said like Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate.
I got up at like 4:30 this morning. When I think of pretty games, I think of Crisis cuz I am in my 30s and I know that there's a Crisis 3 which I'm guessing looks better than Crisis 2, which probably
I
looks
honestly
better than Crisis 1.
I don't think it did actually. I think
Well,
Crisis 1 was the best looking out of all of them.
either way, if you want to play Nintendo games, buy a fucking Nintendo Switch. Buy whatever Nintendo games you want. And if you want to play games at 4K 60 FPS, then don't play fucking Nintendo games until they get to that point, which will be 10 years from now. Because if you, as far as exclusives go, you know what game company is doing the best right now? Nintendo. And you know what company you'll never be able to play their games legally on other platforms? Nintendo. But you can play Xbox games on PlayStation, and Xbox announced a lot of games which are probably going to come to both consoles because they had a Microsoft partner direct. Which,
Hey, real quick,
huh?
Simon, just before you get on it, you can buy Crisis 3 remastered for Nintendo Switch. Just a heads up.
You know what sucks? I knew that as soon as that came out, I knew it. I was like, I'm pretty sure Crisis 3 is on the fucking Switch. And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be called out on it. I was hoping we could just move on. That was why I wanted to move on, because I was afraid we'd go down this. Because I knew it. That part clicked in my brain. All right, Microsoft
Anyway,
had a.
I think your punishment's over. Go
I don't
ahead.
want to talk about it anymore. I thought this Microsoft Direct was pretty good. I thought Unknown 9 looked kind of cool. Granted, I only watched like the second half. I'm probably not going to go through everything because a lot of it is new IP that we don't really have a whole lot of information about. But things that specifically looked cool to me, Unknown 9 Awakening, which is not only a game, but it's kind of this big multimedia franchise with books and comics and stuff. Sleight of Hand, I thought looked really cool. This seems like Dishonored, but it had a pretty cool art style. Griefville Survive the Nightmare, which is like this weird, like Dead by Daylight in Roblox, but Chucky's come into it, it didn't look great, but whatever. I thought that was kind of funny. The Sinking City 2, which I know was a pretty popular kind of Lovecraftian game. Final Fantasy 14 releasing on Xbox, which it's been in beta, so kind of who cares. The Stalker games getting remastered, the trilogy. Persona 3 Reload Episode Aegis, which is the epilogue, which was like part of the re-release on the PS2 when they came out with FES. First Berserker, which is part of Dungeon Fighter. Tales of Kenzera Zua, which is a cool like African Metroidvania. And Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, which is that Capcom game that we saw a little bit of, and now we saw a lot of it. So of those, Noah, kind of what looked cool. I know there was a couple of other things that were announced. Those were the things I kind of thought were worth mentioning. Oh, and Monster Jam Showdown, which kind of looked like Excite Truck, which I thought was cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Mhm.
So, yeah, for me, sleight of hand, shame no gameplay, but I thought the art style was really cool. It reminded me a lot of the comic book series The Goon, which has like a 1920s really like fun vibe to it. So I thought that looked cool. And then the other one, Sinking City 2. Of course, I do like my Lovecraft, so I I thought it was really cool too. It's cool that that game's getting a sequel. The other ones that kind of stood out to me was Tales of Kenzera, which that game looked cool, but I thought it was just funny how many like people were associated with that game. Like watching the trailer, it was like, oh, it's a EA original. Oh, Ridley Scott? I know that guy.
Yeah,
Critical Role? What the
yeah.
hell?
It was like
And
a Mad Libs of famous people.
it was, and it's three groups that like I would not expect at all to collab. And then the first Berserker, at first I was like, "Oh, this looks really cool." But the game looks like it has a really low frame rate, which I was very surprised by. I was like, "Huh, that this is supposed to make the game look really good. This game is kind of looking a little stuttery."
Yeah, and it seems
And
far out, so maybe it'll get fixed. But I kind of thought the same thing.
yeah. I mean, but it's one of those things where it's like maybe it was a bit too early to release this trailer. And then the last one is Kinitsugami Path of the Goddess, new Capcom game. I I don't know how I feel about this one. It's Did you watch like the gameplay overview trailer for it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like this like kind of cool tactics game, but also
Yeah, like
this
a
cool
tower
like
defense
action,
style game.
but like also like a Devil May Cry type action game. So
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's like I'm not sure. I love the art style. I think the art style looks really really cool. I I love the game's art style. Although I'm not entirely sold on gameplay yet, and I don't like the main character's design. Everything has like this very like traditional Japanese like folklore inspired design, and the main character's design just looks a bit, it doesn't look Japanese enough for me. Like I wish that his helmet was kind of a more traditional samurai-ish helmet, but other than that, the monster designs in this game are great. I love it.
yeah, no, I agree. Capcom's been on a roll, so I think it'll be good either way. Overall, though, I thought this was a good showing. I mean, it was a lot of new
Yeah.
IP, so we don't know how these things will come out, but the things that we do kind of know
And
about, I'm excited about the Persona DLC. I know a lot of people are mad because they think it should have been included, but um,
yeah.
that
And I
that epilogue is like trash. Like on the
mhm.
PS2, a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's like really bad." So I'm
Mhm.
guessing it's reworked, hopefully more than some of the other portions of the game, which is kind of a one-to-one remake. So I hope they
Yeah.
added kind of more stuff to make it a little bit more
But
entertaining.
yeah, but overall, not a bad showing.
I
Um
thought it was I
Kunitsu
thought it was a good showing. I would say it was a good
I thought it
showing.
was too. I would say Kunitsugami, in my opinion, does stand out far more than all the other things, though.
Well, that's
Just
why it was the
because,
closer.
yeah, and Capcom has been on a roll lately. Like that's undeniable, and yeah, it's one of those things. Like we're all enjoying it, and Capcom themselves has taken note of it as well, and that's why they're actually raising all of their staff salaries by 5%. And this is me segueing into the feel good story, just giving that official confirmation. So they are raising all salaries by 5% due to the success of their titles recently. All the Resident Evil games have been selling as hotcakes. Street Fighter 6 has been selling incredibly well. Monster Hunter series has gotten huge. And along with that, new graduates are getting a raise of 28%. So it's it's really cool how you just mentioned that in the future, if we're just going to play, if you never play a AAA game, that's fine. Capcom is literally the AAA developer that is reaping the rewards of knowing what gamers want and doing it. They have been putting out consistent titles lately. So Capcom's actually my favorite developer, and they've been putting out such great titles lately. They've been making a lot of money, and they decided to spread that money around instead of just giving it to the people on top. And it's phenomenal. I I just hope that we get to hear about Pragmata soon. That's all I want, Capcom. You're making money. Tell us about Pragmata.
Moon Man's never
What
coming
a
out.
It's
No,
coming out on question mark. They've
Yeah.
confirmed it will come out on question mark.
Yeah. No, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I feel like Square Enix isn't really, but Nintendo and Capcom are making all the right moves. And I think as we kind of see, like I said, these companies fall apart, I think that they're the ones who are going to be successful on top. And those EAs and Ubisofts are going to look around and say, oh, maybe we should have done that.
Yeah.
All right, so that's all in this week's news, or at least big ones. There were some other things. Stellar Blade got a demo, and it was then pulled, but it's kind of funny.
Oh, and also Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator is out now, so if you'd like to check that out, you can.
Oh yeah, and your character will go over to the full game.
Yep.
So upcoming this week in our conventions, we got GalaxyCon in Richmond, Virginia, from March 15th to 17th. Game On Expo in Phoenix, Arizona, from March 15th to 17th. Is that
no comment?
Galaxy?
You're just gonna.
Is that?
Yeah,
Well, I don't know what it is.
Everybody at GalaxyCon, they got that galaxy brain, so you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good joke, wasn't it?
Real good. You got Florida Polycon and March 16th in Lakeland, Florida.
Not to be confused with Florida Polycule.
Yeah. AnimeCon, March 16th to 17th in Fresno, California. That's pretty close to me. And Playthrough, which is Mark's... I probably won't. Playthrough, March 16th to 17th in Raleigh, North Carolina. So if you're near any of those and want to go, you can go. As for games this week, on March 11th, we have Death of a Wish. March 12th, Contra, Operation Galaga. You know why it's called Operation Galaga?
Why is that?
Because it's OG and it's a remake of the first Contra.
That's cool.
I heard the game kind of sucks.
Oh, that's. I thought people were excited about it.
I think they were, and then the demo came out, and I think it's not very good. They're like, I'll just play the original Contra.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. March 13th, we got Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story. March 14th, we got Pound, Paint the Town Red VR.
Oh, that's that song you like by that Doja Cat.
By Doja Cat. Yeah, that song's great. She puts good dick on her kidneys. Then we got What the Golf, and a game you're looking forward to, the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. Then on March 15th, we got Outcast, A New Beginning, and Kingdom Come Deliverance Royal Edition, which is a Switch port. You playing anything?
Fuck that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. So I'm going to talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance, because I don't think I'll ever have the chance to talk about it. Kingdom Come is not a Deliverance, is not a good game. They have tried so hard to make the combat realistic that they just made it more unrealistic, in my opinion, and just wonky and bad. There's so many different things in the game that is just so time consuming. And this game has a unique idea for an ending, but it was very wet noodle of an ending. Super sequel bait heavy. And I am allowed to say all this because I have put over 120 hours into this game.
You're that guy on the Steam reviews who's like, this game blows, puts 100 hours in.
And it's because it's probably it's definitely the worst game I consider one of my favorite games of all time. because it is the epitome of this is not a good game, but there is so much here that I like. I am willing to put in a lot of time for it. As a game, it's really not good, but I love all manner of history, and the fact that they do such a faithful job recreating so many things about medieval Europe, it's like, oh, this game is really cool. So that if you really like medieval stuff and you want to get a really good immersive game, check it out. If you want a good video game, honestly,
Don't
it's
check
not
it
the
out.
greatest.
So you're picking it up on Switch?
No, I put 120 hours into that game already.
Like, I've seen enough.
I have. I did like everything you could do in that game.
Oh God,
So yeah,
I never had
did
any
a lot. I
interest
did
in
all
it.
the side quests and such.
Side quests.
Yeah, side quests. Side qua.
Isn't that the guy who married Jean Grey? All right, so
You watching X-Men '97?
No, I kind of want to. Whatever. Oh, we're getting off topic. We're already like 45 minutes in.
Extremely.
We do have a quick update for the game disc draft, where Noah and I drafted 7 games each. We were previously 1 point difference with Noah in the lead with 4 games released. 3 games. We both had 3 games released. I now have my 4th game come out, which was Unicorn Overlord. Which, Noah, brings me to a question. I'm guessing we're doing the score based on which platform has more reviews.
I was going to say that, yeah, pretty much the platform that has the most review scores, that's the one that we will use, because it feels like that's kind of what the console was. That's which version is like ideal version, the one
that's why I'm asking, because I always considered this just like a straight up Switch game. It was announced at a Nintendo Direct. They've shown it off at a Nintendo Direct. The battles are fast, and it feels like it was made with the Switch in mind. So I was fully intending to use the Switch port or the Switch version as the main one, but the PlayStation one actually has more reviews, so I'm using that. They're only a point difference anyway. When I originally looked, the PlayStation was actually a higher score. But since I've since checked, the PlayStation is now lower. But the Switch is at an 88. This one's at an 87. I'll check it at the end of the year when we finalize everything. But I'll just do with whatever has more reviews. But it is at an 87, which is cool. That was about what I expected. So I'm glad that it did that. Which means I'm now in the lead. But I've had 4 games released. Noah, you've only had 3. The next time we have an update will be in 2 weeks when we both will have a game come out. I have Dragon's Dogma 2. Noah, you have Princess Peach Showtime. I think that's going to be a rough week for you.
Yeah, I am not looking forward to that matchup. Like, the closer Dragon's Dogma 2 gets to it, I'm like, oh man, I forgot that Princess Peach was mine. Yeah,
did you play the demo?
There's a demo? I played the Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator.
Oh, well. There's a Princess Peach Showtime demo, and I played it.
And I'm guessing it's fun.
I think you're going to have a rough week.
Oh, it's really? Is it?
It's not bad. It's not a Super Mario Wonder. It is a Yoshi's Woolly World. It's made by the people who made Yoshi's Woolly World.
Yeah,
but it's fun.
I kind of expected
like it.
that. I kind of expected that. That was one of the later games I drafted. Correct?
That was literally the last game you drafted.
Okay, that's fair. That makes me feel much better. Well,
I mean, you can drop it.
No. I mean, I think that
you need to hold on to that Metroid Prime drop.
Yeah, and I feel like Helldivers underperformed. So it's like, okay, well, I'm sure it'll probably do a little better score than Helldivers.
I think it'll be pretty close to Helldivers, honestly. Probably, I think it'll get that.
Yep.
Probably. Just final recap. I've still got Dragon's Dogma 2 in the can. I also have Star Wars Outlaws, a new 3D Mario, which I don't feel good about anymore, and Metaphor ReFantazio. Noah's got Black Myth Wukong, Avowed, Hollow Knight Silksong, Metroid Prime 4, and Princess Peach Showtime. So we will update that in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I'm Really banking on Hollow Knight this year.
Yeah. I think you'll do fine. I think Avowed will hit. I think if the rest of your games come out, I think they'll hit. I think that Peach is
Yeah.
going to be a weak link, but all my games, I don't think I've had a game break 90. And your two other games, you got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Tekken, which both broke 90, so you're still in pretty good shape. All right, you ready to go into our next March Madness, which is Super Mario Madness? So a couple of things I want to mention. We picked 8 Mario games to be on the bracket. I don't know if these are necessarily the 8th best Mario games. I think there's a strong case that they could be. These are all Mario games. I'll be damned if our list only has one Mario game. I think today we are going to limit it to just one Mario game. We're not going to do what we did last week where we put both Metal Gears on. I feel fine about both those Metal Gear games being on and then not putting any other Metal Gear games on. There's going to be probably a handful of Mario games on this list.
Yeah, definitely.
So games that are not getting on the list today, they can still end up on the list. Not all of them, but I think maybe a couple of them. We'll see how things go. So that being said, let me bring up my bracket. And again, these aren't the 8 best games. These are, I think, just kind of some of the ones that were best simplified. We did leave Super Mario Brothers 1 off just because that's a game I think we could really talk about.
Well, the reason why I said we were talking about it, because we didn't know which 8 to do. We thought about doing 16, but then it just kind of became messy. Like, obviously, like, this game's not going to make it in the list, so it's kind of pointless. And so we were really debating. I forgot about Sunshine, and then Simon brought up, it was like, so we're just not going to talk about Sunshine. And I was like, you know what? In this case, let's just not include 1, because 1's going on the list. You can't make a top 100 games of all time and not include Super Mario Brothers on it. So I was like, 1 is definitely going on the list at some point. So that's why 1 is not a part of it. Because we already know what's going on. We don't know when, we don't know where, but it's going on.
Yeah. So that all being said, the 8 games that we are going to be talking about, and 1 will get on the list, is, and I'm grouping these by the 2. So our first matchup is Super Mario Sunshine versus Super Mario Galaxy 2, Super Mario 64 versus Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario Brothers Wonder versus Super Mario Odyssey, and Super Mario World versus Super Mario Galaxy. We'll start with Mario Sunshine versus Galaxy 2. This one is pretty easy to me. Noah, what about you?
I don't know. It's like, so I think I personally prefer Galaxy 2 over Sunshine, but I think but I feel like out of all of the games on this list, that's a cat. Out of all the games on this list, I feel like Sunshine is definitely the most unique out of all of them. It's definitely the least traditional Mario game out of all of them. And like even though, well, I'm kind of thinking, and it's like the stages in Mario Sunshine, I feel like are a lot cooler than the ones in Galaxy, even though Galaxy's gimmick is like you go to different worlds, they have less rules. I kind of like the ones in Sunshine to me feel more iconic. Like
I don't disagree with you. I think like I can recall most areas of Sunshine. Whereas I don't think I could do that in Galaxy. But and like you said, I think Sunshine has a lot of really good ideas. But that game mechanically feels so much worse than every other Mario game. And it's rough when you have FLUDD, but on the handful of levels where you don't have FLUDD, it's really noticeable. I just played it. I was always like a pretty like hardcore like Sunshine defender. I know a lot of people kind of shit on it. I played it when they released that like 30th anniversary thing that when they killed Mario. And compared to 64 and Galaxy, Sunshine is a much weaker game. And it sucks because, like I said, I like Flood. I think they did a lot of interesting things. I like the kind of gameplay loop, but the actual playing it itself is just not as fun. And then you have performance issues, like on the Manta Ray level, that is just like a drag. So for me, even though Sunshine is maybe more ambitious, whereas Galaxy 2 was able to kind of just refine a lot of things from Galaxy 1, if I were given the choice which one I want to play right now, it'd be Galaxy 2. I think it is just a overall better game, even if Sunshine is a more ambitious one.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. When you brought up the levels without Flood, I was like, yeah, that automatically does it for me. Like, I forgot about those, and like, I feel like part of the thing about the game was Flood has the little hover thing, so if you did miss a jump, it's okay, but obviously couldn't do that in the levels without Flood. So yeah, once you brought those up, I was like, yeah, there's nothing from Galaxy even comes close to that.
Yeah. So, all right. Sorry, Sunshine, you're not getting on the list today, and I honestly don't know if you'll ever get on the list. This one's tougher, and I actually think, looking at this again, I think all of these are actually really hard now. Super Mario 64 versus Super Mario Brothers 3. I regret doing this because
damn it!
This episode's gonna hurt, Noah. This episode's gonna hurt. And you don't even like Mario.
I don't. Well, no, it was one of those things. You were like, Super Mario 64. I was like, okay, easy. And then you were like, versus Super Mario 3. I was like, yeah, still easy. Oh, actually, no, never mind. Oh God, that's a tough one.
So,
jeez.
I think my decision for this one is gun to my head. I think I know what my answer is.
I know what my answer is, and I really, really, really hope you agree, because if not, it's going to be tricky.
Is your answer in 3D?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah.
And thank God.
My thing is, so Super Mario 3, I really, who doesn't like Super Mario Brothers 3? It's fantastic.
Me, because I don't like Mario.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
But you like when he murders Tanukis to wear their skin.
I do like when things murder Tanukis, yes.
But what I think the thing about Super Mario Brothers 3 is the jump from 1 to 3 is insane, just graphically. Like, it is like, if you look at 1 and you look at 3, it is wild that those are on the same console. And then obviously they did a lot of things like the Tanuki suit, and overall it is just a fantastic game that holds up so well today.
And just the fact you can select levels as well. That is a staple for Mario that was first introduced in 3.
You're right. It did create the overworld map too. But my issue is, I think that World is a better version of 3. And so I think, like, and 3, I mean, 3 was the third game. It did refine. I know a lot of people don't talk about Super Mario Brothers 2. But it had 2 games to kind of get to that form, whereas 64 was just the first shot out the gate, and God, did it nail it.
Yeah.
The camera's a little wonky today, but overall that game is still so playable, and it is so good.
Well, and so while creating the game, they said running around and just movement has to be fun. That is the thing that we need to get. Exactly. That is the thing that they got right. And when you look at the 2 other big 3D platformers that came out that year was Crash Bandicoot and Bubsy 3D, where, no disrespect for Crash, but I feel like Crash Bandicoot is like, it very much feels like a 2D platformer in 3D. Like, a lot of the levels are just side-scrolling, and then a lot of other sections are just kind of like pretty basic. Mario really expanded it with not having traditional levels, but having just these open maps that were like, okay, and you can do multiple objectives in these levels. And there is a reason why so many other N64 games were very similar to that style, which we don't really get games like that anymore, I believe. But there is a reason why. Like Mario was huge for 3D games.
Yeah, and it's like you said, they did such a cool job of bringing the overworld to the 3D space by letting you kind of explore this castle, which kind of had all these secrets. It was just such a cool game
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
and then every individual level is just great. And want to hear something
Yeah.
wild? This game was made in less than 2 years.
I get, yeah, I
I mean, I guess it
yeah,
was
I
a
mean, I
different
guess
time, but
like
that's still
yeah,
short.
that's what I'm saying. Like it is weird, but at the same time it was kind of different. Games came out much faster, but yeah, that is pretty interesting, huh?
But I think even like Majora's Mask came out like 2 years after. Yeah, Majora's Mask came out 2 years after Ocarina of Time,
I thought I
and
thought
that
that Majora's Mask had like a really or a really short development time though.
it did,
But
and it was like less than
oh,
2 years. But that just shows how wild that it's like. It is a different time, but that's still wild that Mario came out in 2 years, less than 2 years.
yeah, that is that
Um,
is
all right, so we've got our first semifinals. It's going to be Mario Galaxy 2 versus Super Mario 64.
Mhm.
This one's going to be rough too. The two Switch games, Super Mario Brothers Wonder versus Super Mario Odyssey. Um, gun to my head, it's Odyssey. I think
yeah, same.
I love Wonder. Wonder is
I like
so
Wonder.
good.
I like Wonder, but I feel like Odyssey did more unique stuff. Like I would say Wonder is a more creative game, but Odyssey I feel like was a more like there's just more stuff in it that I was like, "Oh, that's really like cool." Like the thing that I really felt with Odyssey was every level felt completely unique in the sense of like the enemies that you took change the gameplay. Like there's the one level where you become a dinosaur. There's the one level where you become a tank and it becomes a shooter. And it kind of expanded upon what Mario 64 did of like, hey, here's this map. You can just explore it and do all this stuff, which yeah, I gotta go with Odyssey.
Yeah, and kind of building off what you said, this idea that the whole game you're capturing enemies and it all leads up to the end where you get
Mm-hmm.
to capture Bowser. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's such a cool moment. And then obviously like New Donk City, where you
Yeah.
get to play jump up. Yeah, I think you're right. I love Wonder. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Wonder exceeded my expectations, but not only do I prefer 3D Mario's, but I think Odyssey is one of the best.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and then finally, this one I hate. I hate this matchup because
I
these are probably like two of my favorites. Super Mario World
I
versus
think I
Super
know.
Mario Galaxy.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Um Oof, that's a tough one. So
I don't know. I think you're gonna have to sway me either way. I think I know what I
see,
want to do, and I
I
hate
think that
that the other game is getting kicked out so early, but I know what I believe in
so
my
I
gut.
so the thing is, I would for me personally, I just want to be like, yeah, let's do Galaxy. Boom, done. But I also feel like that is nostalgia. Like I of course I played World as a kid, but I have more memories of playing Galaxy just because I like that was the Mario game that came out. And so it's like I'm like, yeah, Galaxy, but I also feel like it's discrediting World for
So, what I want, and maybe this will make it a little easier. I kind of feel
Mhm,
the same way. I love World. World, I
mhm,
think, is still my favorite 2D Mario as much as I love Wonder.
mhm.
And I played World as a kid. I didn't play the Super Nintendo version, but I did play the Game
The
Boy
Game Boy
Advance.
Advance version, correct?
Yeah, and I loved it. Like I mean, I that's how I beat it. I loved it. It was as somebody who had only played Mario 3, it was obviously a huge upgrade. And
Mhm,
maybe I'm a little like oh well, I was playing a 2D Mario because I'd already played like 64 at the same time, so maybe it was a little skewed. But I still think that Galaxy, it's just like the way that Galaxy, I think it just has a bigger sense of wonder, and maybe that is again just because of when you and I played it. Maybe that is nostalgia, but even just the opening of that game, like most games, like oh, Peach got captured by Bowser.
Oh yeah.
It starts with like, I read a comment that was like, was the beginning of Galaxy the Mushroom Kingdom's 9/11, and it's like, I mean, it's like it kind of was like they're bombed into oblivion, and then Bowser doesn't just steal Peach, he steals the whole ass castle, and so it's like that. And obviously it's, you know, it's Mario game, so it's not like brutal or anything, but it's still like,
yeah. You don't see toes like getting blown in half.
yeah, but it's still like that game kind of just carries that whole energy. Like it feels, Sunshine is like, what if we made Super Mario 64 but gave him a water pack and it doesn't feel as good? Galaxy to me felt like just as big of a jump from 2D to 3D. Like
that's fair. And something like even I kind of going back with like tone and such, the Rosalina like storybook time thing had such like a melancholy feel to it that was like, so you remember like what it means, right?
Yeah, I just played Galaxy not that long ago. I played Galaxy
so it's
a
like
lot.
has such a melancholy feel that you don't really get in a lot of games, and especially delivered in such a way. And it's like so simplistic storytelling, but like the music and such, which how it's delivered is just so well done.
Yeah. No, I agree. So we're both in agreement. It's Galaxy. It sucks. I don't like it, but
yeah,
we've got to get we have to choose a winner, and I think that you and I are. I don't think either of us could convince the other that World is better than Galaxy.
No, I think if there's somebody here who's a little older than us, maybe they could make a better argument, but unfortunately, I just can't.
All right. Super Mario Galaxy 2 versus Super Mario 64. Who's going to the
Galaxy
finals?
2 versus Mario 64?
Yeah.
Mario 64, no doubt about it. No question.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. I think that, Galaxy was able to just refine, or Galaxy 2 was able to refine Galaxy 1. 64, again, just a huge revelation. I will say, I do think Galaxy 2 is more fun to play.
I think that's fair, but And
it has Yoshi.
Well, to be fair, the Nintendo DS version of Mario 64 had Yoshi as well.
And Wario.
It did. But yeah, so that's the thing. It's, can you play the game well with a throbbing erection the entire time?
God. Because of Wario?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that you weren't thinking about like Luma or whatever in Galaxy 2 or Yoshi.
Wait, what?
No. I mean, no judgments. If Yoshi's your thing, that's cool.
No, I mean and that's kind of why the 64 version superior to the DS version, though.
Yeah, it's just easier to stay focused.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So 64 is going on to the finals. Super Mario Odyssey versus Super Mario Galaxy. I fucking hate this one too.
This is not a good matchup.
I don't like this.
Crap. My heart's telling me Galaxy, my mind's telling me Odyssey.
I kind of feel the same way, and I truly don't know what to do.
Yeah, and it's okay, I guess we just have to.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest.
I'm going Galaxy.
I need time to think about this.
Sorry, Odyssey.
I'm gonna be honest. To me, this is gonna be harder than the finals.
The finals, yeah. And I think so, because they're both so similar but so different as well. It's what they bring to the table. I said Odyssey though, and
You're locked into Odyssey?
I am. So if I had to play one of them right now, yeah, of course. So from a gameplay standpoint, so Galaxy's fun, and if I had to choose to play one right now, I would choose Galaxy. But we have to look at the level design. Galaxy does the same thing as like a lot of other Mario games where it's like you select the level and then it's like what's your objective and you pick it. So Odyssey does that too, but the thing about it that really made me say, okay, we gotta do it. I gotta go with it, is how like many hidden stars there are and just the pure amount of detail in the world is insane. And while Mario Galaxy is so like smooth and floaty, Mario Wonder, I believe, has better traversal and movement. Like there is a mode in Mario Odyssey. I keep saying Wonder instead of Odyssey. There is a mode in Mario Odyssey where it's literally, hey, put this balloon in a place where nobody else can try, like where you don't think anybody else will be able to get it. And that is just such a fun mode because it's literally like, how are they able to do that? So, and I think that alone just kind of shows how good of a job Odyssey has of the basics. The gimmick may be Mario can control enemies, but all these other things show that even without the gimmick, Odyssey is just such a well crafted game.
No, I think you're right. I think even if you removed Cappy from Odyssey, you still have one of the best
One of the
3D
best Mario
platformers ever
games.
made.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Odyssey. I going into this, I thought Galaxy might win the whole thing, but after kind of thinking about it, I think you're right. I think Odyssey is. Yeah, I think Odyssey is. Now that Odyssey's going on to the finals, and now that we're going into the
Yeah.
finals, I think Odyssey is the best 3D platform ever made.
Really?
Name a better one.
Bubsy 3D.
I think Mario Odyssey is the second best 3D platformer ever made.
Oh man, yeah, we need to have a bracket of like the best 3D platformers that were in that year, came out that year. So it's like Crash, Mario, Bubsy, 3D. It's really just be Mario and Crash would go against each other, and then they would just lose to Bubsy 3D, like they're fighting Akuma in Street Fighter 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Odyssey is the best 3D platformer ever made. I think 64 is maybe a more important game, but like we've kind of been talking about, if I had to play one right now, I'd pick Odyssey. 64 does have those camera problems, and just if I was given the controller and all I could do was just run in a straight line, I think I would have more fun doing that in Odyssey than 64.
Yeah, but the thing is, 64 just was. This is the same, literally the same exact thing that happened last week. It's like.
Yeah, importance
Odyssey,
versus like final form.
Exactly. It's perfection versus innovation. And it's for that reason. I mean, for me personally, I think that this is something that it's same thing happened last week, and I think that it's one of those things where this is the difficult part is we disagree. I think from you, perfection is more important, and for me, innovation is more important. Because I do pick 64 just because I feel like the impact it had on a lot of games, really. Like Naughty Dog's Uncharted, I feel like got a lot of like without Mario 64, we wouldn't have like the Uncharted games. And
yeah,
that's why I'm like,
I think you're right. I think I do put, for me, if somebody was like, I want to play a Mario game, which one should I play? I would not give them 64. I would give them Galaxy or Odyssey before 64, because and I think that that's kind of how I feel about the list, is like, I think that which games are more fun to play comes first, because to me that is like more important. I think like a top 100 list should be games that there's no like certain games, there can be like a caveat, but I think that the less of those you have, the more the game deserves to be on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's unfair, and maybe that means the list will skew a little newer. But if that's
Mm-hmm.
just because it's not the 100 most important games of all time, it's the 100 best games of all time. What
Yeah,
is, and I
that's gonna
think,
be our second podcast.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I think that Odyssey is a better game. Like, it controls better. It has, I think, cooler
Mhm.
moments. Um, it's, I mean, granted, it's, it came out 20 years after 64, so it makes sense that it's a better game, but I don't think that changes the fact that it's a better game. It's like, which version of the Toyota Camry is better, the one that came out last year, the one that came out 20 years ago? Well, the one that came out last year is better. It's got better mileage.
Um,
Which is
so
the
I feel like it's a little different comparing cars isn't the best analogy because I feel like cars aren't really creative. I think that filmmaking is a little like more apt analogy where it's like um something like for example this is like something for example is Birth of a Nation. Movie, terrible movie, not a fun movie to watch, but at the time it pioneered so many filmmaking techniques. And so it's like if they're like, "Oh, I want to watch a movie," I wouldn't be like, "Bro, watch Birth of a Nation, bro. It's lit." No, I wouldn't. But it's one of those things where it's like
but
the
would you
stuff
put
that they
Birth of a
have done
Nation on a top 100 films of all time?
purely from a moral standpoint, no.
So then
But
go ahead.
but I mean, you know what Birth of the Nation is about, right?
No, I don't. I've heard of it.
You don't know? It's a KKK propaganda film.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's so it was a KKK propaganda film, and it's such a unique like talking point in film, like film discussion, because so many of like the shots and a lot of the things it did pioneered modern filmmaking. But it's a movie
but
that is
it's,
just
yeah,
has a
it's
horrible
racist. I mean, it is.
ideology.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's has a horrible it's just a horrible film ideologically. And so that's why I'm like morally I would not, but it's one of those things where it's like but it did do so much for filmmaking. And let
I
me
don't
let me
know.
see
To
if I
me,
can make
to me it sounds like that's a win for Odyssey.
it's
Odyssey's
yeah,
not racist.
that's no, and that's why I'm like okay, there's got to be another film I can use to illustrate this point.
Well, I think I get your
Um
point. Like, even like Citizen Kane, which most people consider like the original like film, like that is like the first
yeah.
modern film. Most people
Yes.
say it's kind of boring now.
Mhm.
And I think that you like, I consider myself decently know about film. I've never seen Citizen Kane, um,
Mhm.
but uh, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I think Odyssey deserves it over 64.
Yeah, it just
And
kind of
again,
feels a little blasphemous.
it does feel a little blasphemous. Um, I feel like dirty doing it, and it's not
Yeah.
like 64 can never make it on the list.
Yeah.
I mean,
We'll put 64 another time.
yeah, but I think Odyssey is. Yeah, I think like I truly think Odyssey is the best 3D platformer ever made.
Yeah, I think that yeah, that's fair. I mean, it doesn't really have a whole lot of competition. I mean,
Except for other
I
Mario
don't
games and Bubsy 3D.
yeah. It's like yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like even like the only thing is it maybe not wasn't as innovative, but yeah, I think that there's a very fair argument to say that it's the greatest 3D platformer of all time.
Yeah, cool. Alrighty then.
Mhm.
Feel bad doing it, but sorry, Mario 64. Super
Mhm.
Mario Odyssey, welcome to the top 100 games of all time, and you are the best Mario game ever
Yeah.
made. Um,
Can Also, I like how in the past several weeks we've really just been going ham with the titles we've had. It's like Street Fighter 2, Metal Gear Solid, Mario, whereas in the past it was like Doom 2016, like just random like 360 era games,
Yeah.
even though that was PS4. But yeah, um where do you think is a good placement for it?
Number one. No. I'm not gonna try my luck.
Well, I feel like number one, it's before we give number one, we have to do a lot more fine tuning for the
Oh
list.
yeah. Well, that'll be like the last thing we do.
The number one bracket is the top 8 games.
25's open.
Yeah, I think 25 or what's yeah, 25's good.
Yeah, I'll put it there for now. I think it deserves at least to be in the top 25. I would probably make the case that it should be a little bit higher, but
Yeah.
you know what's the worst thing about Odyssey? This is my only complaint about Odyssey. I don't know how to spell it. I'm pretty good at
Isn't it?
spelling.
I
Odyssey is
think
like the
it's
one word I can't spell very well.
Is it Odyssey?
Yeah, I always think there's like one S and two D's or something. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, Odyssey is a weird word. There's
It's
a
not
word
a word
that
you
I
use
never.
often.
No, and it's one of those things where it's like I can't remember what word it is. It's definitely a word I seldom use. But it's like whenever I have to spell, I'm like, oh geez, I don't like it. I mean, if it makes you feel better, I'm pretty sure it's a Greek word, so like, it's a
No.
translation thing. That could make you feel a little better about it.
It does. It does make me feel better.
Yep.
I'm just going to go through our list because I don't think we've done that in a while. So at number 9, we've got
No.
Halo Combat Evolved. Number 10, we've got Metroid Prime. Number 14, Metal Gear Solid. Number 15, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Number 25, Super Mario Odyssey. Number 30, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Number 31, Metal Gear Solid 3. Number 50, Bioshock. Number 56, Silent Hill 2. Number 70, Halo 2. Number 80, Baldur's Gate 3. Number 83, Dead Space Remake. Number 95, Luigi's Mansion. Number 99, Star Fox 64. And number 100, Doom 2016. Yeah, feeling pretty good about that list. I know you're not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a pretty fair list.
I know there's one game you want out of there, though.
There is one game that it's like, there's one game on there where I'm like, it's good, but I don't know if I put it up there. But it's not enough for me to tarnish the list just yet.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I'd say it's
6,
a pretty
7,
good list
8,
overall.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We're at 16 games. I think when we get to 25, we'll maybe chuck some things off there.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll have to play Kingdom Hearts to figure out, because that's still on our consideration page.
Yes, that is definitely on our consideration page.
All right, well, we're going pretty long. So, Noah, before we get out of here, what have you been playing this week?
Like I mentioned earlier, I've been playing a lot of Sifu and also Helldivers.
Oh, you picked up Helldivers? Oh yeah, you told me that last week. Last week you just had only played it last week. But you'd only played the tutorial, so you didn't really talk about it.
Oh yeah, it's a fun game. I really recommend it. It's very intense for a shooter, especially a PvE shooter, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good time. I don't know the staying power for the game, but I hope it's a long time, especially because you don't know too much about Helldivers, right?
I played the first one.
Oh, I didn't know that. But, so, something I don't think it was in the first game, there are planets that, there's 2 main, like, factions you fight, we'll just say robots and bugs for right now, and it's kind of cool because it's like, planets have a meter where it's like how much control you're under, or how much like control it's under by the enemies or the humans. And so whenever like the community completes missions, it raises that meter up to be more controlled by humans. And they also apparently have somebody whose entire job it is just to monitor that, and after like events and such, to like pretty much start invasions, like, oh, now this planet's suddenly under invasion, like we got to focus on that. And so it makes it more of like a real-time war, because it's like, yeah, battle for a certain planet. So that is really cool, and it makes it feel like when you play, it has more of a purpose than just, oh, gotta get my dailies. Because
Yeah.
you're a part of something.
No, that is really cool. I want to check it out.
Yeah.
I just haven't yet.
Mhm.
Cool. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VI. Like I said, I did play the Princess Peach Showtime demo, and I really liked
Mhm.
it. It's fun. I don't know if I'll pick it up yet, but it's pretty simple. Like I said, I think it's definitely aimed at a younger audience, kind of like Yoshi's Woolly World. But
Mhm.
I think it still is a good enough time. It kind of reminds me of Luigi's Mansion in a way, where you're in like this area and you kind of go and do these little levels and things, and it's a Mario supporting character on their own. I'm excited to see how it does. I It wasn't bad. It was a little slow though. But I've
Mhm.
mostly been playing Final Fantasy VI. I got to like the World of Ruin, which is kind of when shit hits the fan. I'm a little mad because I guess there's a character who you can save, and I didn't. And by the time I realized that, I was
Mhm.
pretty far in, so I don't really want to go back. Um, but the whole second half of that game, which I guess spoilers for a game that came out 30 years ago, is your whole party gets like disbanded. So you can kind of go attack, and fight Kefka whenever you want, but most of that is just kind of like regathering your allies.
Mhm.
So it's kind of cool. You get to see kind of what, because basically the good guys lose, and so you
Mhm.
kind of get to see what all the heroes do, and it's a good way to close out their arcs. And I really enjoy it. I was a little, I guess, underwhelmed by the game for a while, just because so many people say it's the best Final Fantasy, and I'm like, oh, I think seven's better, but I still think seven's better. I think I like it, but I definitely see why people love this one, and it's a really strong game. It's really cool.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
all right. Was there anything else you want to talk about before, or you want to just get your plug?
Yeah. So here's the thing. You often forget about we live in such a high tech advanced world with all this technology. I mean, like, look at us right now. I'm talking to you through a microphone that's being uploaded to a computer that's connected to the internet that is now being sent miles and miles away to you in America.
And you haven't even
And
asked me my name.
and I haven't even asked you your name yet. And I think that now that you mentioned that, I probably won't. But we gotta. It's one of those things where it's like we live in such a weird time where it's like we're constantly wired and we're like constantly have to be busy. Like, oh, we're watching something on YouTube, we're playing a game. And you ever see your pet that's like lying out in the sunshine and it's like you're like, that's weird that they like that, and then you do it too, and you're like, wow, this is really nice. And you kind of start to wonder, what other wisdoms does our pets have? Like, you know how you think that, Simon?
Kind of. Not really.
Yeah.
I guess.
And I think the one thing that modern society hates, but I really think that we got to do more, is just barking like a dog.
Okay. I thought that. Okay. Can I mute you?
No, seriously, Simon, do it, do it, do it. Just try it, just try it.
No, because I think it's going to be annoying for people listening.
No, no, it won't. Trust me.
Okay. I was actually on board with what you were saying. I was like, yeah, sometimes it is okay to just lay on the ground in the sunlight. I thought you were going to tell people to touch grass, but barking like a dog works too.
No, yeah, well, I mean, it is so much more fun than you realize. Just go like, it is surprisingly fun. Highly encourage it to all of our audience members, just right now.
Yeah, if you're
Just
listening
let
to
out.
this, just
Let's give them a couple side.
a little bit of silence and just let out some barks.
Yep. So we'll just give you a couple seconds to do it right now.
All right, there you go.
All right. Yep, that's good. Yep. I hope, and I'm sure that they would agree. Yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah, if you like that, let us know. We'll bark more
Yeah.
often, I guess. Before we get out of there, I didn't add this to our news because I think anybody listening to this already knows. But Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, did pass away. Is there anything you kind of want to
Of course.
say about him before we get out of here, Noah?
Yeah. It's so he wasn't just the creator of Dragon Ball. He was, of course, the lead artist for Dragon Quest, which is a huge deal in Japan. There, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Japan, Dragon Quest games have to come out on Fridays because too many people were calling in like sick when they came out on any other days. And so it's a huge deal in Japan, but of course, it's a huge deal for gaming, but of course, he was mostly known for Dragon Ball Z, which there is a huge amount of overlap between anime and gaming fans. I know that Dragon Ball Z, even though we didn't have cable while Dragon Ball Z was like premiering, it still was like a big part of our childhoods. We
That's
had
what I was gonna
all of
kind
the
of
Budokai
say.
games.
We
Yeah, like
kind
we
of
had all the Budokai.
we interacted. You're right. We didn't have cable, so we interacted with Dragon Ball through games.
Yeah. I remember like we rented Dragon Ball Z Budokai for the GameCube, and then that Christmas we got a PS2 and the PS2 version, so we ended up returning the rental copy for the GameCube, and yeah, we just played that, and then it was always a big deal for whenever a new Budokai game came out. That was I've never watched all of it, but that's how I mostly know the story.
Yeah, and to kind of continue off what you said, yeah, I loved Dragon Ball growing up, and I to this day have probably seen less than a quarter of the series, but I did pick up the Dragon Ball story through games. Like you said, the Budokai games I loved.
Yeah.
I also played through all like the Legacy of Goku games and
Yep.
Boost Fury. But also
And
I
keep
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, because I loved it so much and we didn't have cable, I picked up all the manga. I still have all 42 volumes of Dragon Ball, and that is, I mean, just like distilled Akira Toriyama. Obviously, he had assistants who helped draw in, but that is how I engaged with that series through games and his artwork itself. So this is just a huge. I mean, this one most of the time I'm okay with celebrity deaths. There's been a couple that have hit me. This one definitely hit me harder than most. Um, Truly, just I mean, yeah, he kind of created like the modern shonen with power ups and things, and uh,
Tournaments were also him too, right?
yeah, he kind of created the tournament arc first in Dragon Ball, and I mean that's yeah, all every time there was a tournament arc in Dragon Ball, it was always like did so well, so that's why we see him in most shonen
Yeah.
manga. So
And there's another thing too, little off topic, but I mean, for those of you who don't know, he died at 68 years of age. Unfortunately, this is something that's very, very common amongst mangaka. They
yeah.
have such an insane work schedule that even when they kind of like are able to relax, their bodies aren't as healthy as they should be. One Piece is starting to kind of get towards its end. I am a firm believer that what's unfortunately going to happen is One Piece is going to end, and then like a week or two after, Oda's just going to pass away.
Well,
just because he put so much into it.
I think in Toriyama's case, it was like a head injury.
Oh, really?
I think so. You can look it up, but I think it was a head injury because they announced his death on Friday, but I don't think he died Friday. That's just when they announced it. I think like his funeral was Friday, and but the only close family friends knew. Either way, again, yeah, I mean, huge bummer. I can't wait to see. I think Dragon Quest 12 will probably be the last time we see some of his designs, and that game is like my most anticipated game just because I want to see his final work, and I'm sure it'll be great, just like all of his other designs. And yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah, and I'm glad that today or this year is like a really big year for Sandland, which is another feels like a cool manga he created.
That was like his first kind of big one, and then Dr. Slump, right?
So if I am not mistaken, I think Sandland may have been after Dragon Ball's. No. I think actually, yeah, I believe Sandland was actually after Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, Sandland was original run was May 9th, 2000 to August 8th, 2000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Well, then
yeah,
never mind.
I think it was to kind of a more lax
Oh, yeah. Just
thing that he
probably
wanted to
something
make,
light.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Toriyama, this is according to Wikipedia. Toriyama intended for Sandland to be a short story about a man in a tank that he wrote for his own enjoyment. However, he had difficulty drawing the tank, and as Toriyama insisted on drawing everything himself, soon regretted it. He, although he became frustrated, he had already devised the plan and was forced to go through with it. So, yeah, it was something that he started off just doing it for himself, was frustrated, but he saw through it to the end. So, yeah, it is nice though that he is being remembered for all of these things. And yeah, I think that Dragon Quest 12, you told me they're going to go for a more darker feeling. I think there's also definitely going to be a more sad feeling associated with it as well.
Yeah, 100%. So, again, rest in peace, Toriyama.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to get out of here, Noah?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Okay, let me see if the outro will work. Probably don't need it that loud. Is it playing?
Yep.
There we go. I can't always hear it.
Playing for you.
Now it is.
Oh.
Thank you to Pecan Pie on Upbeat for our intro and outro songs. Thank you to Zach Robinson for our logo. If you like this, please follow or subscribe and consider leaving a rating and review so more people can find us. And tell people about us. You can find other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. And feel free to give us a subscribe or follow or whatever it is on YouTube as well. If you want to send us an email, you can do so at gamedisc.podcast@gmail.com and we'll read it on the air. You can send us questions, suggestions, or anything else you want. And we will see you all next week where we will continue our March Madness. And I think we're going to do Resident Evil. But we were also going to do Resident Evil this week until we realized it was the most important day of the year, Mario Day. So if you like Resident Evil, come figure out which one is the best one with us next week and figure out if it's going on the top 100 games of all time. Goodbye!
Hey, we're never fucking talking about Mario again, okay?